Hi, everybody. This is Linda Abraham. I'm the president and founder of Accepted, and I'm going to be presenting 7 Steps to MBA Acceptance in 2018. I want to welcome you all this evening. I assume for most of you it's evening. There's probably some who are on the other side of the world where it's already morning. And I have a couple of quick things to go over before we dive into the material. First is there is a worksheet that we've created for this webinar. I think it'll allow you to get more out of the webinar. If you haven't already printed it out, then what I recommend is that you download, print it out, and use it to take notes. Also, I will be asking questions during the webinar, posting some polls. For the polls, I think it's pretty obvious. You just click on the appropriate option. For answers to my questions, I ask that you post them in the question window. So we're going to use the question window both for your questions and your answers. And then the other element will be occasionally I might ask you to raise your hand, and that involves clicking on the hand icon. I'm not sure actually I'm doing it in this particular webinar, but that's what I sometimes do. All right, before we get into and the last thing I want to mention is that I will have a fantastic special. We have a fantastic special for webinar attendees only. This is not going to be mentioned in an email follow-up or anything like that. So stay tuned. That'll be at the end. And the other thing that will be at the end is a little contest based on the content presented this evening, where you can win a copy of the book that I co-authored, MBA Admission for Smarties. All right. Before we get to the heart of today's presentation, I'd like to learn a little bit about you. So can you please let me know where you are located? City and state if you're in the United States, city and country if you're outside the United States. Let's get a sample of geography here. Boston, Massachusetts, welcome. Dallas, Texas. Thousand Oaks, California, almost a neighbor. I'm in Los Angeles. Toronto, Canada. Santiago, Chile. Okay. Arlington, Virginia. Lagos, Nigeria. Whoa, you're up early. Nashville, Tennessee. I expected we'd have mostly New World attendees. Anybody else want to share? I think it's New York City. Toronto, Canada. Wonderful. We've got a couple of people from Toronto. Calcutta, India. Again, it must be very early where you are. Okay, I hope you're an early riser. All right, great. Thank you. Let's move on. I would also like to know where you're at in the application process. Okay. When do you intend to apply? The options are fall 2017, winter 2017, later in the process, or haven't decided if applying at all. You're unsure. Let's see where we're at. Again, if you could click an option on your screen right now. Okay, let's see if we can't get the. Oh, this is interesting. We're actually a little different from this morning's group. I did mean winter 2018. I'm sorry. That's a clerical error. It should be fall 2017, winter 2018, or later. Sorry. Thank you. All right, we have 87% having voted. Oh, you're a great audience. Okay, I hear the results. Whoops, there we go. 40% say fall 2017, 0% are applying in winter 2017. I suspect that the 50% applying later is because of the typo, and 10% haven't decided if applying or are unsure. So my guess is that we have a slightly smaller percent applying in the fall or committed to the fall, and the rest of you are winter of 2018. My apologies for the error, or later. Now, this webinar grew from 3 seeds. First is my frustration with applicants who start the process too late and shortchange their chances at their dream schools. The second seed, from which this webinar grew, is the amount of limiting and misleading imagery in MBA advising. And this comes from consultants like me, from admissions directors, and sometimes from MBA applicants and students themselves. And the third is the paradox of MBA admissions, and we're going to get to that at the very end. After over 20 years in this business, I've seen a lot of metaphors used in describing the MBA admissions process. Some say it's an accounting exercise. Some say it's all about personal branding. Some say it's all about marketing. Well, I believe that metaphors and similes can be useful. I think they've been really abused in the MBA admissions world, and consequently they've ended up obscuring the process. I can't promise an image-free webinar, especially using slides and screen sharing software, but I do promise the next 40 minutes or so will provide you with a purpose-driven, goal-centered approach to the MBA application process, including what you should be doing now 5 to 8 months before you submit your application. And if you follow these 7 steps, you're going to end up maximizing your chances of acceptance at top MBA programs when you apply in round 1 or round 2 of the 2017 application season, or even later in the next application cycle. So let's play farmer and see if we can't cultivate these 3 seeds into a flourishing, healthy MBA application. And that's not bad for someone who just complained about abusive metaphors in MBA admissions. So the first seed, as I said, is my annual frustration with applicants who come to us at the last minute. Yes, we can polish your essays during the week before the essays are due. You might pay rush rates though, but we can do so much more if you come to us early, and you can do so much more if you start this process early. The webinar is all about using the next few months before the applications come out to improve your profile and maximize your chances of acceptance. Now, let me ask you, before I tell you what I think, what should be the starting place for your MBA application process? In the question window, please. What should be the starting point of your MBA application planning and process? Anybody want to give me? Okay, somebody said the GMAT. A couple of people said the GMAT. I disagree with that one. Decide what schools you're interested in. Well, what criteria are you going to use, Alexander? Judging whether you're ready. Research schools goal. Hillary, very good. Rationale of why you want to do an MBA. Excellent, Andy. Based off where you want to go from the MBA. Very good, Samir. Decide whether an MBA is necessary and clarify your goals. Exactly, Kyle. That's exactly where you should be starting from. Step 1 in the 7-part framework is hone your goal. Basically, as Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. Clarify your post-MBA goal. This is the foundation for your entire MBA application strategy, even, by the way, if your goal changes while you're in business school. Let me give you an example why it should be the framework. Well, one big reason it should be the framework is because school admissions officers are looking for it. So, for example, in a recent Admission Straight Talk, which is our podcast episode, I interviewed Sujin Kwan from the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan, and I asked, what makes an application really stand out for you? Her response, people who seem to really know what they want and know themselves, and who can articulate it well. They can connect the dots. That means you have, in order to be able to connect the dots, you kind of need to know the exit, kind of like when you did a maze when you were a kid. You need to be able to figure out where you're headed and how the MBA will get you there, and then which MBA programs will get you there most effectively and efficiently. So to start this process, you need to determine what are your post-MBA goals. The short-term post-MBA goal, frankly, is more important than the long-term, and it consists of function and industry. What do you want to do? That's the function, not what you want to study, and the industry in which you want to do it. Can some of you, for me, in the question window, put what your post-MBA goal is? Now I'm talking about the immediate one. Anybody want to share it? I'll give you some feedback. Private equity. Okay, that's definitely specific. Human Resources Director, all right. You could also say what industry you want to do that in. Associate position in private equity, okay. Start a nonprofit. Again, I'd like to see more about the industry in which you want to do that. Private equity, healthcare, or TMT and megafund. I'm not quite sure what TMT is. I'll have to look that one up. But certainly private equity, healthcare, that will work. Biotech, excellent. Position in pharma, what kind of position? What do you want to do in pharma? You have the industry, what about the function? Business development, consulting, that's pretty broad still. What industry? Any industry? Well, again, that's pretty broad. Technology, media, okay. All right, brand management and consumer goods, well defined, Lisa. Okay? Analytic or strategic managerial role in healthcare. Very good, Kyle. That's specific. Okay. All right, let's move on. I think you guys are getting the idea. The long-term goal usually is 5 to 10 years down the road. It can be more aspirational. It can be more of a dream. Perhaps it's a way of contributing to the betterment of society on a larger scale. That's all fine. From an admissions perspective, it's less important than the short-term one. But if you have something like this, don't hide it. Prepare to discuss it. The basic idea is that schools want to know they can help you succeed. In order to help you succeed, you have to have some idea of where you want to go. Now, what if your goal isn't that sharp? Then I would suggest that you talk to people, do informational interviews, look at what you like and what you're good at, and then talk to people in positions that you find attractive. And ask them, what do they actually do? Is it something you would like to do or you enjoy doing? What education do they believe was useful to them? Do they wish they would have had before they started? From what programs do they want to hire people for the positions you find appealing? These are all excellent questions to ask in informational interviews. And what I would do here, by the way, is just invite somebody out for coffee, invite them to meet you for breakfast or for lunch, and until you can clarify your goal in terms of function and industry. And once you have that clearly defined goal, it's not only that it will satisfy admissions officers, but it can be a very substantive and meaningful guide to you in the process of choosing schools. Because then you choose the schools that are going to best to help you achieve your goals. So again, the goal serves as a guide to you, but you also realize, this is what I was trying to point out with the quote from Sujin Kwan, at many schools, a clearly defined, realistic post-MBA goal is as much a requirement of admissions as a competitive GMAT or quality work experience. Chicago Booth and his criteria, it boils down to 3 things: curriculum, community, career. Guess what career is? Can they prepare you for your chosen career? Well, you have to have chosen something in order for them to know that they can do so. That's why so many schools ask about your goals. They care. Now, many of you, when I ask where should you start, you listed your GMAT or your GPA. Those relate to your qualifications. Step 1 is about what you want out of the MBA degree. Step 2 is about what you bring to the table, evidence of your potential for success in their program and beyond. In the question window, what different elements are going to make up your qualifications? Career, curriculum, and community, Samir. But getting back to my question, what elements are going to make up your qualifications in the question window? Anybody want to give me an answer to that? References from previous bosses and prestige of previous job. Those are parts of it. I wouldn't say they're the things that come immediately to mind. Joseph suggests prior education and experience. Yes, the GMAT is certainly a factor, Stephen. Yes, work experience, absolutely. GRE, GPA, references, work history, essays, extracurricular, volunteer. Yeah, that's pretty good, Hillary. GPA plus references plus prestige at undergrad plus ability to tell your story, most important. Prestige at the undergrad and at your previous employer, I find it interesting that it came up in 2 of your responses, it is a factor, but it's far less of a factor than what you've accomplished and what you've done and what you've contributed. This was actually a question that was addressed this morning. Yeah, no, I realized it was prestige. Prior work experience, GMAT and GPA, yes, Henry. Leadership and community involvement, very good, Andy. That's definitely part of it. Your prior education and work experience along with your GMAT score. Yes, Vidi. Okay, let me dive into this a little bit. But you're all going in the right direction. Okay, there are 4 basic areas for you to examine when you're evaluating your qualifications, and I like to call them the 4 pillars of your application. The first is academics. Show that you can and will do the work. The second is work experience. Now, in terms of work experience, most of you got in terms of academics that the easiest way to show you can do the work is your test score and your grades. What about work experience? I'm going to give you a poll, and I want to know what you think about this. Which is more important? Quantity, quality, or are both important? in terms of work experience we're talking now. Okay, what do you guys think? You are a great group. Getting a nice active, ooh, good. All right, we have anybody else want to vote? Fantastic. 90%. Whoa, that's great. Okay, 7% say quantity, 57% say quality, and 36% say both are important. I am definitely in the both are important camp, and this morning also quality won the day, but let me tell you why I think most are important. Schools their career placement centers are very much geared towards people with, I would say, 2 to 8 years experience, with 3 to 6 years being the real sweet spot. And again, schools want to know they can help you succeed. So if you come in either with much less work experience or much more work experience, they are concerned that they're not going to be able to help you succeed. And that's an issue for them. So while it's not impossible to get in with less or more, I think that is an obstacle, and we'll deal with that a little bit later. Another, and I also want to mention, what is quality work experience from an MBA admissions perspective? Quality means responsibility. You've assumed responsibility and increasingly responsible roles, growth and impact on the job, and demonstrated managerial ability and leadership. Another quality or dimension that's becoming increasingly important is multicultural or global experience. It's not a requirement, but is certainly something that is increasingly valued. Okay, the third pillar of my 4 pillars is personal qualities. And what do you think they're looking for in terms of personal qualities and characteristics? In the question window, please. Some of you have already said it earlier, but I'd like it in this context. Not recommendations, that's not it. Your personal qualities. Coachability, that's good, but it's not really what I'm looking for. Leadership, Hillary, you got it again. Have you been talking to me? Collaboration, that's good. Maturity, self-awareness, hardworking, teamwork, leadership, excellent, Andy. Accountability, that's good, Aditi. What makes you, ability to bring diverse experience, that's actually a little bit later in the webinar, but you're right. Grit, very good. John V, that's good. Openness to change, that is something. Fit, we'll get there in a minute. Conscientiousness, that's kind of an assumption almost, Juliet. But all right, let me get to what I was thinking of. For those of you who said leadership, it's on top, definitely. If it's location, location, location in real estate, it's leadership, leadership, leadership in MBA admissions. In addition, schools value teamwork, organizational, analytical, and communication skills, initiative, entrepreneurial mindset, obviously quantitative ability. Okay, I just realized that I did not hide the poll. Here we go. Teamwork, organizational, analytical, and communication skills, initiative, entrepreneurial mindset. They want to see that you are a contributor, a giver, a person of impact. That's kind of the bottom line here. All right. Now, the 4th pillar, which some of you have kind of touched on, is fit. You know, you could argue with me and say that all these elements are part of fit, and I would grant you that, but I want to bring out separately a particular element of fit that I think applicants tend to underestimate, and that is fit with the school's culture and values. Now, schools, some of them have taglines, some of them have branding campaigns where they lay out what they're looking for. Some of them have pages that say, this is what we're looking for. These are our criteria for acceptance. You need to review those and understand it, okay? Those are important. If you're interested in attending Stanford, and every page of Stanford's website says, change lives, change organizations, change the world, what does that tell you? What are they looking for? What are they devoted to? Anybody want to hazard a guess? Not a guess, a thought, an answer in the question window. What does change lives, change organizations, change the world mean to you in terms of what they're looking for? Disruptive innovation, okay. Impact, yes. Yes, they're looking for change agents. Exactly, Henry, you got it. They're looking for change agents. They're looking for people who can affect change, who have had an impact in the past. Um, so again, in terms of showing fit, if that's the motto of the school, then presumably the bullet points in your resume, the point of your essays, the short answer questions on the application should be showing that you have affected change. Hopefully for the better. I always wonder why Stanford didn't say improve lives, improve organizations, improve the world, but they didn't ask my opinion when they made their motto. So, that would, and if that's what that motto tells me. If you have a school that talks a lot about leadership, then I think you have to make sure that you discuss your leadership impact, your impact as a leader. Or if it discusses teamwork, then you have to discuss your collaborative skills. Those are some of the, so make sure that you understand the school's culture and values, and that you've adapted your essay or focused your essay on those particular qualities and experiences, those experiences that best exemplify and reveal those qualities. Can any of the elements on these 4 pillars, can they be improved or mitigated if you feel they're weak, enhanced? Yes, because you are starting early. Can you improve your profile to make yourself more competitive? We're going to get to that in step 4. But for now, let's go to step 3. And step 3 is research the schools and choose the schools you want to apply to. Okay, now I want to ask you with this poll, which element below, here's the poll, is least important when selecting an MBA program to apply to? Okay, which is least important? The options are career placement, curriculum, rankings, and extracurricular activities. Okay, let's get, again, the options are career placement, which is least important, career placement, curriculum, rankings, and extracurricular activities. And again, you folks are a fantastic audience. We're at 83%. Anybody else want to vote? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close the poll and share the poll with 87% having voted. We have 4% said that career placement is least important. 19% said curriculum is least important. 35% said rankings is least important. And 42% said extracurricular activities are least important. I'm in the rankings camp. The extracurricular opportunities and activities at a particular school can be tremendous networking opportunities and places where you can, again, can really facilitate career change and be very, very important. They can also make you much happier. So rankings, I would consider them, frankly, last in the process. Again, we're talking about a goal-centered, purposeful approach to the application process. And that should be focused on what you want to get out of the degree. In other words, preparing you for a particular career path. And then your fit with the program, as from the 4 pillars that I just discussed. And you know what? Rankings can give you a lot of information that you can use in determining whether you're qualified, or your competitiveness. But I would, in terms of the actual ranking, I would start to consider that after you have multiple acceptances and you're trying to determine, kind of reputation and brand. First, get accepted, and then you can talk about the rankings. Now, what schools are best suited to help you achieve your goals, and how are you going to determine that? I would look first at recruiting and placement, specifically the employment reports at different schools. I'd consider your educational preferences. What's important? Do you want a case method school? Do you like experiential learning? A mix of the two? Do you really like lecture? Do you want a small school, a large school, urban, rural? Does it matter to you which coast you're on? Warm weather, cold weather? Those kinds of things. And then again, as I mentioned a minute ago, extracurricular activities and opportunities are a really important part of the MBA education. My niece a few years ago was rooming with an MBA student, and my sister, my niece's mother, called me up and says, you know, she's always going to these networking events. Doesn't she ever study? You know, that is a significant part of the MBA education. Where should you look for this information? Well, although I just kind of put down rankings, I do think that specialty rankings give you some valuable information. And then again, I mentioned career services employment reports. Obviously, the school website is a fantastic source of information, blogs and contacts with career students and recent alumni, MBA tours and school-sponsored events, and of course, school visits for the schools that you are most interested in and that are most feasible for you to visit. The point is that information is your friend. This is a major investment in time and money, and you should do the research that it warrants. The point of all this is that you should be able to answer these two questions in the affirmative. Does the school support your goals? And are you competitive at the schools you aim to apply to? Now, it's fine to apply only to schools that support your goals, but if you're not competitive, you know, you might end up with a fistful of rejections, and you don't want that. Which kind of looks like this little diagram. If your schools you want are over here, the school's likely to want you are over there, and there's no intersection, you have a problem. I think this is actually a diagram of rejection. But if you consider both your goals, what you want, and your qualifications, what the schools want, then you should end up with a diagram much more like this, and you apply in this area, right here. That's where you want to apply. What if there are a couple of schools that you want to apply to out here? Fine, apply to a couple, but make sure that there are plenty in here, and maybe even a couple over here, depending upon other circumstances. Okay? Now, if your diagram, I don't know that you're necessarily going to diagram it the way I did, but if your situation looks more like this than like this, well, then you should either choose other schools or improve your qualifications. And improving your qualifications is action item number 4. Improve the areas that need improving. So let's look first at academics, specifically grades. Let's say your undergraduate grades are not something that make you proud today. What should you do? Well, you can take business-related classes like statistics for business, accounting, maybe calculus, and earn A's in them if you have a problematic GPA. You may also want to consider certificates like the CFA if it's relevant to your goals. I did a whole podcast episode, 5 A's for your low GPA, which has been very popular, where I laid out 5 different things that you can do and probably should do to address a low GPA. So you may want to take care of that. You can also consider certificates like the CFA if it's relevant to your goals. If your quant skills are weak, if you are the proverbial poet but your grades are good, consider something like MBAmath.com, HBX Core, or MOOCs. Now, the GMAT, if it's nice and high, can at least partially compensate for a low GPA. But then again, there are those people who are struggling with the GMAT. So what do you do if your GMAT is on the low side, or the GRE for that matter? Well, there I have some information, and I think my advice is going to make many of you very unhappy. The best way to handle a low test score is to retake and raise it. If you're not sure if you should retake, or if you've taken the GMAT 3 or more times, you may want to see these resources. And by the way, we will be sending out these URLs, so you don't have to be writing them down after the webinar. Just look out for our email. One is a short video, as you can see from the URL. The other is a full webinar where I go through who should retake the GMAT or GRE, and who should basically move on and try something else. What if work experience is the pillar that you find problematic or worrisome? Well, let's say you have too little work experience, less than 2 years. Well, One thing about that it's kind of like being too young is a problem. Time takes care of it. Perhaps wait a year, work an additional year, or aim for schools with lower average ages at matriculation. Schools in general seem to be turning away from admitting and matriculating MBA students straight from college and with less than 2 years of experience because employers find those students less attractive. Another option, especially for those still in college, is to consider an MS in management like that offered by Duke or London Business School, Kellogg, or Ross. So we've already talked about a lot of different things you can do. Retake the GMAT, take classes, assume more leadership roles. Wait a minute. Wait, I skipped a part here. Okay, what if you have too much work experience? Aim for programs with higher average ages at matriculation, kind of the converse of what I just said. If you have 6 to 8 years of work experience or even a little bit above. If you have 10 plus years of work experience, then I would strongly recommend the Executive MBA or Sloan Fellows programs or Stanford's MSX program. I would also suggest that if you do apply to the full-time traditional 2-year MBA with a little bit more work experience, be extra clear about why you want an MBA now at your level, and show that you are not relying on the school to find you a post-MBA job. You have the contacts to achieve your goals, or perhaps already have an offer waiting for you to come back to your employer. That will make you a much more admissible applicant if you are on the older end, perhaps even a more valuable applicant. And again, if you don't have that international component that I mentioned, I'd strongly encourage you to try and acquire it on the job if possible. If not, acquire it through personal travel. All right, now what about the personal qualities I mentioned? Well, one thing I've focused on in terms of the quality of your work experience is growth and responsibilities and leadership. So if you can take on more responsibilities at work, and I don't mean just more busy work, I mean a bigger role, that will allow you to demonstrate leadership and growth. It's also frequently not easy to do at work. It's easier to assume leadership roles in volunteer commitments. And the volunteer world also frequently allows you to show yourself as a contributor because they're chronically underfunded, understaffed, etc. So, these are the qualities that you want to be able to show: leadership, teamwork, communications, analytical skills, initiative. And most of them, with the exception of analytical skills, are harder to show. Teamwork, you can probably also show at work. They're easier to show in a volunteer setting than in a hierarchical work setting. If you can do it at work, great. If not, then again, look at community service. Some of you are going to say, am I too late? I haven't really been involved in anything since college. Well, I would just say better late than never. If you've been involved in community service consistently since college, continue what you've been doing, and if possible, expand your responsibilities. If you haven't been involved, I would say start now. Community service is an opportunity to demonstrate the desired personal qualities that I've been talking about, and it also is, most of you intend to apply round 1, according to what you said, or maybe almost 50%, I think it was around 40. Significant number of you will intend to do that, some of you later. If you start now, and let's say that round 1 application gets pushed off to round 2, or you're waitlisted, or you're rejected, suddenly the short-term community service commitment has expanded, and it no longer looks like something you're just doing for the application. And again, if you're not going to do community service and be involved when it's in your interest to do so, you're kind of telegraphing to the schools that you won't do it when you're there either, because it doesn't pay for you. So we've talked about a lot of different things you can do to improve your profile. Retake the GMAT, classes, assume leadership and responsibility, all kinds of things. Until now, I've been really talking about pre-application strategy and tactics more than implementation and the application itself. But I'd like to shift gears here. So far we've discussed 4 steps, right? Hone your goals, evaluate your qualifications, research the schools to determine which best support your goals, and improve those areas of your profile that need improving. Now let's move to things that will actually affect the document or documents you're going to submit. So step 5 is start preparing for essays, but very low-key prep, okay? No pressure, as I say. I wouldn't start writing the application essays yet, but I would create a file or perhaps an Evernote or file or something like that where you can jot down ideas for topics to include, notes from your informational interviews, and thoughts about specific schools and possible essay topics. What should be part of your essay notes? What experiences are you most proud of? What was a challenge you faced? What did you do? What was the impact you had? What character traits did you reveal through your actions? What were the results for your organization, team, group, whatever, as a result of this initiative? Once applications are out, you can start working on the essays if you are so inclined. But for now, I would nail the other stuff, and I'll tell you what I mean about that in a minute. Start work on the essays when the questions are out, which usually is July or August if you're aiming for round one deadlines. Some of you can start in June, but again, in terms of really working on the essay drafts, I think that I wouldn't start that now. What you can start now and really nail now is your resume. Ideally, I would suggest that you keep it to 1 page. Some schools only want 1-page essays. Some say 1 to 2-page essays. If you're going to keep it that succinct, remember to focus on achievements and outcomes, not just descriptions of responsibilities. Quantify whenever possible your responsibilities and your impact. Don't, and please, 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 I will tell you, did not attend this webinar if you do this. Don't use bullet points to repeat what your job title implies. I have seen resumes where people wrote job title, consultant, and then bullet point, consulted on projects, or financial analyst. Was the job title? Bullet point, analyzed financial transactions or analyzed investments. That is a complete and total waste. That was step 6, nail your resume. And again, that's something you can get done now. Action item number 7, decide on and ask your recommenders. Ask them if they're willing to write a strong, supportive letter of recommendation for you, and tell them that you will give them material they can use, and also about 4-week notice, maybe a 4-week window. Give them a time frame. You need to know if the person you're going to ask in August is going to be away the entire month of August. And again, you don't need to do this now, but I would do this May or June. Now, I'm going to review the 7 action items, but first, if you would like to win a free copy of the book that I co-authored, MBA Admission for Smarties, a no-nonsense guide to acceptance at top business schools, get ready. The first 3 people to answer this question in the question window will get a copy of MBA Admission for Smarties, Kindle or paperback in the U.S., Kindle only outside the U.S. All right? The question is, what is the first to do of the 7 steps? Okay. Goals. Vidi, you got that one. Hone your goals, Juliet. And hone your goals. Kofo, you got it. Rachel, did you get the names there? Okay. Okay, great. Most of you got that. Good. Again, you're a great audience. It's a pleasure. Okay. Let's get the rest of them up. Okay. So the first one, as most of you got, is hone your goal. And that is the foundation of a successful, goal-oriented, purposeful approach to the MBA application process. 2, evaluate your qualifications, GMAT, GPA, work experience, community service, leadership, work, the whole gamut to see if anything needs work. 3, research the schools to determine which best support your goals and where you are likely to get accepted. Improve those areas that need improving. That's number 4. And 5, essay prep. Again, here's where we kind of shift focus to actual application items. 6, work on your resume. And 7, decide on and ask your recommenders if they will help you. Now, some of you will look at this list and wisely decide to apply round 2 or wait even a year, especially if you have a lot to do. Others will only have a few action items because you've already started on many of these tasks. Congratulations! But you all should have something to do. And whatever you do now will improve your chances of acceptance. And right now, this minute, I'd like you to jot down either on your worksheet, wherever you want, napkin, I'd like you to write down at least one action item you're going to start on this week based on today's webinar, and then set yourself a deadline for completion. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that, and I'm going to have a sip of tea. Okay, great, thanks. Let's go on. Now, one step is fine, but do you have a plan not only to prepare yourself to apply, but to actually apply? How are you going to show fit with your target schools? And then for the paradox of MBA admissions, which we really haven't discussed. Once you show fit, how are you going to show that you also stand out in the applicant pool, that you are an individual who will contribute to your class, your school's community, and ultimately make a difference in the world? That's the third seed I mentioned way back at the beginning of this webinar. The stress-inducing paradox at the heart of MBA admissions is that you have to show you fit in at your target programs and at the same time are a unique individual, a standout in the applicant pool, somebody who's going to really add to it, add to the school and the class. And it's not easy. We understand that. And if you're feeling a little overwhelmed now, you have lots of company. We here at Accepted really understand how tough it is. Many of us have MBAs, and we have been advising successful MBA applicants for over 20 years. We'd like to help you apply confidently and successfully. While you want to do this exactly once, we've been helping MBA applicants get accepted, as I just said, for over 20 years. We can help you not only get accepted, but get into a program that launches you on your dream career trajectory. Remember, we're talking about decisions that can have an enormous impact on your future, your financial health, and your level of professional satisfaction. It pays to have an experienced professional guiding you at this critical juncture. Here's what you get at Accepted. You see it on your screen. You get a customized approach that fits your needs. We're not one size fits all. You get options so that if you only need a little help with one element of the application, that's what you'll get. If you're starting from scratch and want comprehensive assistance, that's what you can get. One dedicated advisor who becomes an expert in your story and helping you present it. Candor, a mentor, and objectivity combined with decades of experience in MBA admissions. Now, some of you may be thinking, Accepted is expensive, and we're definitely not cheap because of the quality of our staff. However, there are also expensive risks associated with not using Accepted. Reapplication can easily cost a few $1,000s. One additional year of pre-MBA earnings can cost in the 5 figures, and I'm talking about dollars. One additional year of a job you dislike if you're currently unhappy with your job. And there's the potential that you could have gotten into a better program with lifelong higher earnings and a better network. That could cost you in the 5 or 6 figures. Every year we work with applicants who talked to us a year earlier and decided after taking the do-it-yourself approach and getting rejected that now they're going to work with us. They would have been better off working with us initially, and so would you. But enough from me. What do accepted applicants say? Here's a couple of examples on the screen. It is an overwhelming process, but Karen offered a structured and comprehensive approach and solid advice on the entire application process. Without a shadow of a doubt, I recommend working with Karen, accepted to Oxford. I've been admitted to Booth and am accepting. Your help and guidance was outstanding and allowed me to focus my energy on presenting myself in the best light, getting the result we wished for. And here's another one. It's not on the screen. There was an Indian male consultant who got rejected the first time around and started working with accepted consultant Jennifer Bloom early in the process the second time around. In his words, and I'm quoting now, "Yesterday I got the good news, and it was from Harvard. I'm absolutely thrilled. Amidst the euphoria, I want to take out a moment to thank Accepted, Jennifer in particular, for all the help and in ways that went way beyond admissions consulting. For motivating me when I received some rejections in last December to almost yelling at me when I tried to make last-minute tweaks to the essays." Now, I'm encouraging you to get started early. I'm encouraging you to use us early, and I'm going to put my money where our mouth is. We are offering you $155 off any of our services really, but this allows you to try us 1 hour for only $150. We normally charge $305. It's valid today only. Start MBA 150 is the coupon code. You can use it again anytime this evening. till midnight Pacific time. You can get your burning questions answered and answered by experts, discuss how to proceed, how to mitigate your weaknesses, and of course, where to apply, whatever concerns you about the MBA application process. Try us out at this extraordinarily low price point. And if you would like comprehensive help later when it comes to actually applying, we offer flat rate packages as well as hourly plans. But for now, I would just say start with 1 hour and get those really, really burning questions answered. To do so, go to accepted.com/MBA/services consulting, and again, we will send out the URL. Add to cart and enter the coupon code STARTMBA150 to take advantage of this fantastic offer. We're here to guide you and help you get accepted to the best MBA program for you. And now I want to introduce, I'm happy to take your questions, but we also have several of Accepted's consultants here to assist me in responding to questions, and just in case you're getting tired of hearing from me, we're going to add their voices, okay? So let me unmute them. Okay, first we have Madeline Baker. Madeline Baker has worked in the admissions offices at MIT Sloan and Yale School of Management. She has an MBA from Columbia Business School and also volunteered in their admissions office when she was getting her MBA. She has corporate banking experience in New York City and Hong Kong. Esmeralda Cardinal is also with us today. She's a former Associate Director of Admissions at Yale School of Management, Director of MBA Admissions at Michigan State Broad, and was a consultant at Cardiff Business School in the UK. Since joining Accepted about 2 years ago, her clients have been accepted to top MBA programs, including Harvard, Kellogg, Booth, Columbia, Tech, London Business School, Yale, IE, and others. Natalie Greenblatt Epstein is also going to be answering questions. She is a former admissions dean director at 3 top business schools. She has reviewed over 70,000 applications, interviewed over 2,500 candidates, and has trained nearly 700 admissions directors and alumni volunteers to select outstanding candidates for admissions. She joined Accepted almost 10 years ago, and since that time, her clients have been accepted to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Booth, Kellogg, Columbia, MIT, Tech, Haas, and many other programs. Okay, so now for your questions. Welcome, Esmeralda, Madeline, and Natalie.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome. Okay, first question is from Kofo. What qualifies as a low GMAT or low GPA? Madeline, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Linda, and welcome everybody. I would say, well, a low GMAT, that really depends on what kind of school you're going to be looking for. And, you know, I think you're always going to have to look at what kind of school you'd like to go to and where the average GMAT score falls. And you want to make sure that you're well within that GMAT score when you apply to that school. So, for example, if you apply to Columbia Business School and they have a GMAT score that's into the 700s, I would say a low GMAT score would be anything below 700.
Okay. Esmeralda, do you want to add to that? Oops, wait. Okay, sorry. There you go, Esmeralda. I hadn't unmuted you. I apologize.
There you go. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. No, I do think that Madeline was right on target. I think you have to, there is not such a thing as a low GMAT per se. You need to look at the school individually and try to score as close to the average as you can.
Okay. So Natalie, do you want to add anything?
Oh, no. My colleague said it all.
Okay.
It is very school dependent.
Absolutely. It's school dependent. If I'm going to get a little, I'll go out on a little bit of a limb here. Okay. Now it's a very shaky limb. So the guidelines I'm going to give you are fuzzy. If you are more than 0.3 on the 4.0 scale below the school's average, or you're more than 30 points balanced but below the school's average GMAT score for matriculants, I think you have a low GPA or a low GMAT score. Now, if you're from an overrepresented minority, or an overrepresented group, I should say, in the applicant pool, it's probably higher. If you're from an underrepresented group that typically does well in the program, it's lower. But that is a guideline that I use. Again, it is fuzzy. A GPA, for example, that is rising is more forgivable than one that went the other way. If, so there are extenuating circumstances. Now, the the webinar that I mentioned on the podcast, accepted.com/137, deal with these issues. When, what mitigates, what exacerbates both the low GMAT and the low GPA. Rachel, do you want to just post those URLs again? I guess we'll be sending them out, so maybe it doesn't even make sense to post it again. All right, let's look at some of these other questions because we got some really good ones. Again, I want to thank you. You've been a marvelous audience. Okay. Archie asks, is the work experience the heart of the application? Esmeralda, why don't you start with that one?
I would say it's a very important element of the application, but I would not say the heart. I think everything else, they look at everything else almost equally. Everything that we was discussing in the webinar. So I would not, because it doesn't matter if you have a tremendous work experience, but your stats, your academic ability, for example, is well below the average of the school, then you still will not get in. So I think both the academic and the work experience are very, very important, I would say.
Okay. Natalie, what do you want to say? You want to add to that? Okay.
Yeah, no, Esme really nailed it. All aspects of the application are important. Is it the heart? Well, you're applying to business school. So it's certainly a very important element, but if all the other things are not there, your work experience, no matter how wonderful it is, might leave you hanging. And yet, on the other hand, if you have everything else wonderful and your work experience is a little weak, you might be disadvantaged. This is really where we can help in terms of positioning you and helping you strategize in terms of all the different elements that go into the application.
Madeline, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I like what my colleagues said about the work experience. I think the most important part that Natalie just mentioned, which is when I remember reading applications, the 4 pillars of your application, they have to make sense. So if everything's shining but your work experience isn't there, the application might not necessarily look as good as if the pillars are kind of balanced and you're presenting a really nice application picture. So, just underscoring what my colleague said.
Right. One of the things I've been working on in my webinars, really for the last several years, is trying to communicate the idea that you can't just focus on one element of the application when you're applying to very, very selective programs. That's why I have 4 pillars to the application. That's why it's 7 steps. That's why it's 5 this. It's really, everything counts. And you can't just focus on one weakness or one strength. It's a package, just like you are a package. And, you're complex. Human beings are complex. You're a human being. Admissions officers are trying to meet you as human beings, as future potential leaders. So you can't just look at the GMAT or the work experience or the this or the that. It's a package. Okay. Let's look at some other questions here. Kyle asks, how important is it to have a specific position you'd like to get at as a goal versus a good idea of what type of work you want to do in which industry? I don't know. I want to think about that. Natalie, you want to take that?
Again, it's school specific. There are some schools that aren't as adamant that you have an idea of what you want to do, but exactly the idea that you the goal that you want in mind or that you have in mind, but that you have an idea. And there are some schools, because of their culture and the resources that they have, that really want you to know specifically what you want to do moving forward. Now, Linda mentioned this in the webinar. Once you're in school, all bets are off. So you can explore as much as you want once you're in school. It's certainly easier to have some direction so that you don't get overwhelmed by the number of companies that are coming and you're kind of going crazy, and you can try to focus what the industry or the functional area that you're interested in, and focus your classes that way. But it, again, you know, school dependent, you dependent, and you know, it's going to be based on the kind of schools that you're looking at. And that's very telling in terms of what the school offers as well. If they're allowing you to explore, then, you know, and you're still in the exploration phase, then maybe that's a good school for you.
Right. Madeline or Esmeralda, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I'd like to add something.
Sure.
I think Natalie was spot on, but I would say that you really want to be as specific as you can, especially with the short-term goal. The long-term goal, you can, you know, be allowed to be a little bit more general, because of course it's, you know, 5 to 10 years. I mean, especially like 10 years down the road, I mean, it's understandable if you don't know 100% what you're going to be doing, but at least give kind of a direction of where exactly you will be going. But with the short-term goal, the problem is if you don't know where you want to go, it's important, because after about 3 weeks after you start school, you're going to be meeting with recruiters, you're going to be going to corporate presentations, etc. And if you really don't know, on top of all your schoolwork, you will have to be heavily researching where you're going to be going. And there is a lot. So the schools really want you to have a pretty good idea of why you want to do an MBA and where you're going. And that's why it's important. It's important that you have kind of a pretty good idea of what you want to do. And of course, the more specific you can, the better. And not everybody is 100% specific. Again, like Natalie said, some schools vary on how demanding they want you, how specific they want you to be. But it's important that at least you have kind of pretty realistic view in terms of where you've been and where you want to go after your MBA.
Great. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Esmeralda. I'm sorry. Anything else to add? Anybody want to add on that one?
I want to add on to something that Esme said, which is the being realistic, because there are people that want to make dramatic career changes that a business school may not enable you to make that dramatic career change. So you have to look at the skill set that you're bringing to the table. One of the things that we did as admissions directors was also look at what the companies were seeking in terms of the kind of skills that they wanted in their company. So you have to be realistic about what it is you can move into as well. So I just wanted to piggyback on that message.
Okay, I'm going to post one more question. If I have a low GPA from undergrad, 2.7 to 2.8, but I worked in investment banking for 3 years, and I've already done 2 levels of the CFA, would getting a designation help marginally more than doing something else to improve academics, i.e. retaking courses instead of the CFA? Madeline, do you want to?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, first of all, and I think that you know, low GPA is always tricky because you can't go back and you can change it, obviously, but I would say absolutely go and finish the CFA if you can. Being an investment banker helps tremendously, but there are a lot of investment bankers out there, so if you can get that CFA under your belt, absolutely go do it. And you know, even depending on how timing works out, I would take it as far as you can with regards to, and maybe actually I would actually qualify that. See how the GMAT shakes out, get that CFA under your belt, and do everything you can to eliminate any fears on the admissions office behalf in terms of being able to complete the program successfully.
Okay, anybody else want to add?
I'm going to piggyback on that one too. This is Natalie again. So Madeline talked about the fears that admissions officers have. Admissions officers are incredibly risk averse. Incredibly risk averse. So you need to do everything that you can to mitigate their fears about
It's coming from investment banking. You should be able to understand that.
I'm sorry?
It's coming from investment banking. You should understand
that. I know, right. So, I mean, you know, the fact is that given, the fears of admissions directors, mitigating those fears is incredibly important for you. Again, something that we can help you do by advising you on next steps, as Madeline just did.
All right. I also want to emphasize that you can't just focus on one thing. Madeline touched on the GMAT score. A high GMAT score in combination with passing the CFA, demanding work experience, can go a long way towards mitigating that low GPA. May not get you into schools with an average GPA of 3.7 when you have a 2.7, but it can go a long way towards getting you into schools maybe with an average GPA matriculation of 3.2 or 3.3. So don't forget that there are multiple steps and multiple things that are going to be looked at. Now,
go
ahead.
Thing that
go ahead.
Add, is that also know that the optional essay exists for a reason. Many times, if your GPA was a 2.7 for a particular reason, other than you just didn't want to study, but if there was something else going on, maybe you had to work at the same time. So those are the kind of explanations that should be explained in the kind of situations that should be explained in the optional essay. And we definitely can help you with that, just to make sure that you are not making excuses. And you're not over-apologizing, but you're stating the facts. And that usually, it's good. Sometimes admissions committees don't know you as well as you do. So give them some information so that they can make a decision a more well-rounded and more correct decision about your case.
All right. You're most welcome. Some of you are thanking Natalie, Madeline, and Esmeralda for their answers. I want to thank you three also for coming this evening and for sharing your expertise. I want to thank the applicants for attending and participating. Thank you for your questions, your answers, your time, your attention, and again, your participation. You've been a fantastic audience. I have one more thing. Actually, it's one final story and one final thought. The thought, get started. There is a lot to do to have an excellent MBA application. I've given you 7 steps. Some of you may only have 1 or 2. That's fine. That's wonderful. But get started. Work steadily and submit your best. You'll thank me come deadlines. You will hopefully thank me even more when you start getting acceptances. Now, the story. A couple of years ago, I got a call from John. He had an excellent GMAT, a prestigious job on Wall Street, a slightly below average GPA, but in a really tough major from a public Ivy. He was aiming for top business schools. And this competitive, accomplished, articulate, and very ambitious applicant spoke to one of our consultants and to me about accepted services. And he decided to take the do-it-yourself route. The following year, to my surprise, he called me again. He had not gotten in anywhere. He'd gotten close. 3 waitlists. But in the end, he didn't make the cut. And this time he wanted to work with a consultant whom he had spoken with a year earlier, and that consultant was Natalie. Natalie, you probably recognize the story. I changed the name. It's not his real name. Perhaps the first time around he was too cocky, perhaps he was too nervous, perhaps he didn't present himself well, either via the written app or his interviews. He probably presented himself somewhat well, but not well enough. Whatever it was, he didn't get in that first time. Here is what he wrote about his experience with Natalie. From the start, Natalie was honest and really got to know who I was. After reviewing my previous submission and talking multiple times, she identified numerous ways that I could enhance my application. As part of helping me craft an application that highlighted my attributes, we redesigned the layout of my resume and optimized my essay topics to present me in the most well-rounded way. My favorite thing about Natalie is that she is very strict on the ethical boundaries of offering advice, but not taking over the application. This allowed me to focus on what makes me unique without having to form-fit my stories to some predefined template. Her best advice would push me to emphasize a point that I had only previously briefly mentioned, thereby livening up my stories. She is very responsive to email and took extra time to prep me for the interviews via Skype. If you expect the best from yourself, then Natalie, and this is Linda speaking now, would add her colleagues, will help you achieve it. The results speak for themselves as I will be attending MIT Sloan, and I'm ending the quoting. After Harvard Business School and Stanford, MIT Sloan has the lowest acceptance rate of any U.S. MBA program. Now, Natalie guided John so that he avoided the pitfalls, brought out his strengths and distinctive qualities, and ultimately showed that he belonged at a top MBA program. Natalie's colleagues can do the same. John got into a top school with acceptance help. So can you. Get accepted.